You're listening to the Getting Smart podcast. I'm Shani Carruthers, and today I'm joined by Josh Fryday, California's Chief Service Officer within the Office of Governor Gavin Newsom, to lead service, volunteer, and civic engagement efforts throughout California. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so excited to learn about all of the great things in California. And one of those great things is California Volunteers. What is that?
California Volunteers is an office within the governor's office here in California, as you mentioned, overseeing volunteerism, service, civic engagement. But really, it's around this idea of how do we engage all Californians in being part of the solutions to some of the biggest challenges we have. And Governor Newsom is very, very animated and motivated to think about how we bring people together through service. And so he created a cabinet level position for service, and I'm charged with executing the mission.
So, as the one who is in charge, what does that role entail? How does that connect to the overall vision?
So we oversee all the programs that California Volunteers run, which start off with all AmeriCorps programs in the state of California, which is service opportunities for people to receive a stipend and a scholarship for college. And so we oversee and administer those programs throughout the state. But since Governor Newsom got elected, we've created some really exciting new innovative programs to really think about how do we engage people differently? How do we bring people together in community? How do we connect them? And how do we really make them part of the solution so people feel empowered, so people feel like there's actually something they can do on big issues like climate change and poverty and homelessness and education. And so we've launched programs that I'm hoping we'll get a chance to talk about, like College Corps and the country's first Climate Action Corps and other initiatives to really try to engage Californians in new and innovative ways.
And you mentioned some of those challenges that are prevalent in California. And are there other challenges that you all are working on in general around the California Volunteers Program?
Yes, since we're in the governor's office, really our job is to react and respond to what are the priorities of the state. So I'll just give a quick example. For the last few weeks, we've been inundated with atmospheric rivers that have caused just enormous flooding and damage throughout our state. And so we've had our service members deploy to the front lines to deal with some of the recovery efforts and the mitigation efforts. We've had volunteers step up across the state during this disaster time. And we've asked, because of a program we launched called Neighbor to Neighbor, where we ask neighbors to check on each other during times of disaster to really step up and protect each other. And that's an example of how in times of disaster, California Volunteers is stepping into action by calling on all Californians and saying there's actually something that you can do to make a real difference, and here's how you do it. But really, it's no matter the priority for the state, climate change is something California is leading on because we're living it. It's not just the fires that are devastating much of our state for the last several years, but the floods that we just experienced the last couple of weeks, the drought, the 1,200-year drought that we are experiencing, and that we're calling on all Californians to step up and take action around that. So really, no matter what the issue is, we've created programs and opportunities for every Californian to be able to step up and really to work together in communities to solve these issues.
You have to have so many great stories. Can you think of one to share?
Yeah, and I wish, honestly, I wish we could have all of our fellows and our service members and volunteers on. They're much more interesting, and really, they're the inspiring ones. But I'll share, one story from our Climate Action Corps. It's a young woman who was born and raised in Compton, California, in a low income area of our state, in LA, and she found out about our Climate Action Corps program and got incredibly motivated about the idea of learning about sustainability and learning what it means so that she could bring it back to her community and she could educate her community and empower her community. And she's now in the second year of our Climate Action Corps program, doing really important work around planting trees and urban greening. And as we know, in places like Los Angeles, but also places all over the country, where we have these things called heat islands, there's been a massive underinvestment in poor and low-income communities around urban greening and tree planting. So we have a young person like this example Amaya, who is able to do something really positive that helps all of our state, that helps our communities, that's helping climate change deal with the existential issue there. But she's doing it in a way that is allowing her to go back to her community and empower the people she grew up with. And to me, that's the kind of inspiring story that we're seeing all over California.
And I know that's just one of so many. And maybe what's even led you to get into this work. Like, why did you decide that this was the career for you? What is your path?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think for me, um, I've always wanted to just, yeah, even from a very young age, I've always wanted to try to make a difference. I've always wanted to try to have an impact on the world and make change. I think I was maybe because of the way my parents raised me or the things that I saw and experienced growing up. I saw that there's huge inequities, there's huge injustices in our world, and I wanted to do something about it. And it's been my experience that service has given me that avenue to actually do something about it. That we have this really gift that was been given to us, I think, in America, despite all of our faults and all of our shortcomings. We have this gift of democracy to be able to actually impact the world around us. But in order to do that, you got to step up and engage, and you have to be able to jump in to do something. And service for me has given me that path. And whether it's as a high school student being able to work on international poverty and health in the Dominican Republic, or as a officer in the United States Navy, being able to respond to one of the biggest natural disasters when I was in Japan, and we had the tsunami, the earthquake, and the nuclear disaster, and seeing the impact that we could have in helping people through our military operations there, or serving as the mayor of my hometown and understanding and seeing how you can make a difference locally. It's always been my avenue to try to create change. And what excited me so much about Governor Newsom's vision, about him wanting to really invest in this work in a new way, is that it would give me the opportunity to empower others and give others the chance to create change themselves. That's the power of service. It's the power to come together with people who look very differently than you, who think differently, have different backgrounds, and accomplish something great together around a common mission, a common purpose. And we need more opportunities like that. We know how divided we are. We know how isolated and polarized we are. And I think people are hungry for something different. I certainly am in my life. I certainly don't love the polarization and how divided we all feel. And so if we could figure out ways to bring people together, but also allow them to solve problems at the same time in the way that I've always wanted to do, to actually create real change, then to me that's super exciting, and I jumped at the opportunity.
So, when you find that power in volunteerism, what is the benefit to communities and individuals?
Yeah, well, I guess we'll start with maybe start with communities, because I think everyone thinks about volunteerism as about really helping others, and then I'm going to get to the individuals because I think in some ways that's the more interesting part of this work. Um, in communities, I think it's always been the story. It's the only way we actually create change is by having individuals and passionate people step up and say we need to do things differently. And I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and I'm gonna dig in, and we're gonna create that change. Whether that's by tutoring an individual and creating the change in that young person's life forever, whether that's showing up to a city council meeting and trying to change a law or pass an ordinance that's going to change the community. People stepping up and individuals stepping up to serve others is literally the foundation of our entire democratic society, but it's also the only way we create change. And so the power of why we're trying to create more opportunities for people is because we recognize that people need this outlet. People need to feel like they have a sense of agency, that they can change the world around them. And we want to try to assist with that. And we've seen the impact. We've seen whole communities change because of the tree planting programs we've run. We've seen whole communities change around the way people they respond to disaster and they support each other in their communities. So we think that this work is fundamental to how a community really deals with problems that they're facing and tackling it together. In terms of individuals, I'll share. I saw this wonderful movie recently that I've made our whole executive team watch, and soon our entire team will see it. It's on Netflix, and I'm not just promoting them, but it was such a sweet story. It was called Mission Joy, and it was the story of this beautiful friendship between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And they have this beautiful friendship. But what the movie was about is them exploring in their friendship, what does joy mean and what does happiness mean? And they both sort of conclude in their storytelling and in their own lives something that I've known to be true for me personally, but something that I think we hear over and over and over again from our volunteers across California, which is that the heart of joy, the heart of happiness, is when you help other people. It's when you're connected to other people. It's when you are able to feel like you have a sense of purpose and it's benefiting others. And that feeling that we all get around the holidays when we give gifts to others, or we volunteer, or we make a difference in somebody else's life, that is such a critical part of just being a human being. It's the essence of being a human being in many ways. And we know that we know that it impacts your mental health. We know from research it impacts your physical health to volunteer, and we also know that it's critical for economic success. Communities that have high rates of volunteerism are more resilient in economic downturns. People who volunteer are more likely to get jobs because of the networking and the social capital that comes from building these relationships. And so we know the impact that service and volunteerism has on not just solving problems in communities, but on actual individuals, which brings us to the crux of the whole question and the whole mission of California Volunteers, which is, how do we make this accessible to everybody? How do we make sure that every Californian and ultimately every American has this opportunity to feel like they can make a difference in somebody else's life, and that they have real value? And that's one of the core principles of our work, is that everybody has something valuable to contribute. Everybody. Martin Luther King said, and we just recently celebrated Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King said in one of his greatest speeches, just a couple months before he died, called The Drum Major Instinct, that everybody can be great because everyone can serve. And we believe that in California. We believe that everyone can be great. We want everyone to be great, but we also know that there's economic barriers, there's social barriers, and there's other obstacles to doing that. And we're working really hard to try to break those barriers down and create more opportunities for everyone to really enjoy all of these benefits.
So, how do you make it accessible to everyone?
Part of it is we have to create the opportunities. We have to invest in the actual civic infrastructure that's necessary to make it available for everyone. So Governor Newsom is the first governor to really, in California, to really invest literally hundreds of millions of dollars to create programs like our College Corps program, which is creating debt-free pathways for low-income students who commit to serve for an academic year while they're in school, and they receive $10,000 for their service. We call it the California GI Bill. I'm a veteran, and so it's easy for me to understand it that way. But the concept is simple. If you serve, we're going to help you pay for college. And these students are receiving, not just graduating with less debt, but they're also receiving really important real life work and experience while they're in school. They're building social capital. They're building the networks to launch their career. They're also helping the community in a really big way. And we're graduating a generation of young people who now understand how to come together and work with people from different backgrounds to solve problems. So from our perspective, a program like that is a complete win-win-win. And we did it by investing. And that's the key, is that we actually need to put resources into breaking down these barriers and building that infrastructure. And we've been able to, and we're very proud of this with our College Corps program as just one tiny example. We've been able to make it eligible for the first time, and really the only program that we know of in the country that's a service program eligible for AB 540 eligible dreamers, which is our dreamer population, who, because a lot of national service programs are federally funded, they're excluded because of state investment. We've been able to include them. So part is we have to invest in creating these opportunities, forum for all Californians and ultimately all Americans. And we've done the same with our Climate Corps by making sure that we made the stipend and the scholarship, which is up to $10,000 as well, high enough that people can serve the communities they grew up in, no matter where they grew up in. But I think part of all this is also changing a culture and creating a culture of service where we send the message from not just governors and politicians, but CEOs who are willing to say, if you serve in your community or volunteer, we're gonna hire you. University presidents saying, if you're going to graduate our college, we want you to have a service experience. Principals who are willing to say to their students that when you graduate, we want, as much as we want you to know math and science, we want you to be a responsible citizen as well. And we want you to understand how beneficial volunteering and service is in your life as well as the community. So we need to create a culture where our leaders are calling on people to serve, are expecting people to serve, and then actually investing in creating the opportunity for them to do so.
So I'm curious if there are other ways that you're embedded in the school system. You gave us a couple of great examples. So curious if there's some other things you're doing and how you created that alignment so that even the workforce began to value the culture of service and the university presidents as well.
Yeah, so with our College Corps example, just to begin with, we have across the state of California, we're partnering with 46 universities, and we have over 3,200 students involved in this College Corps program. Half of those students are spending this year, their year of service, working as tutors and mentors in our low-income schools across California. So they're working very directly inside of schools, helping those students who were most affected by COVID, helping them recover, creating connections with those students. And we did that because we recognized it was a top priority and we needed to provide more of this work. We also have thousands of other tutors through our AmeriCorps programs that are tutoring and mentoring in the schools. And so we see that having our young people served by working in the schools is critical. We're also going to be doing a pilot that's going to be starting next year of how do we scale service learning in high schools? How do we create real meaningful opportunities for students? I think we see a lot of schools across the country are starting to require or have required volunteer opportunities in order to graduate. Our question we're going to ask ourselves and is, how do you make that a meaningful opportunity, something that really is helping a young person find their place in the world, find a community to belong to, find purpose and connection, so that volunteer experience is not just showing up and parking cars at a fundraiser on a Saturday, but is deeply embedded in meaningful work for the community. So we're working on that. And then in terms of how we're thinking about the jobs work, because this is a critical piece. We know in California, for instance, over the next 10 years, there's going to be a need for 1 million jobs in the new clean and green economy. And so the question we're asking ourselves is, with programs like our Climate Action Corps, where we have Californians who are passionate about this issue, they want to serve, they want to make a difference. We're working right now to figure out how to take them from their year of service in California and connect them directly to a job in the new economy, and creating that pipeline, that infrastructure, that bridge for them to do it. But we're also doing it not just in the private sector. We're doing this in the public sector. We are going to be launching a large effort with the California Department of Education around creating the next generation of teachers in California. And the hope is that our service members, these service members that we're going to be investing in, are going to be really the foundation of that pipeline, because they've already raised their hand that they want to make a difference, and they're gaining experience early in their career, and we want them to be the next generation of teachers. So we're thinking about this across the board, but there's a lot of work we need to do, and we just have to keep investing in it.
And are you all also thinking about, just beyond service, what does it mean to be a citizen? Or not just a California, but just a global citizen?
Yes, of course. It's we ask ourselves that question all the time, and are constantly trying to answer that question. And obviously, the word citizen has its own connotations, legal statuses that we're working through, because We believe very much in inclusivity here in California. And again, back to the point. Um, I think back to the point maybe I brought up earlier. I'd love to go a little bit deeper on is this idea that everybody has value. Everybody. So we created a program, just to give you a quick example of how we think about this, where that was specifically designed for foster youth who are transitioning out of foster care to do a service program in California where they would spend a year, they would get paid, they would get a scholarship for college, and they would use their experience as a former foster youth to give back and help other foster youth that are starting to transition out navigate society, navigate all the services that are out there, navigate how to transition. We're also doing a big youth jobs corps program where we are helping those who are involved in the justice system to re-entering into society to give them a job that serves. And the message that we want to be sending is everyone has something to contribute. And a lot of times, if you had a traumatic background, if you had challenges in your life, that experience is sometimes the most valuable because you now have something to offer somebody else that is inevitably going through the same thing. And what we want to do in this idea of what does it mean to be a citizen, what does it mean to be a responsible member of our society, is make sure that that people know we believe everyone has something to contribute. And the question is, can we create an opportunity for you to contribute in a meaningful way based upon your own life experience? And we've seen very powerful examples of how this helps everyone that's engaged in the process. And the question again is now, can we just continue to scale it in a way that everyone can be actively involved in?
Yeah, we talk about, safe spaces and brave spaces. And so that, that's kind of what came to mind when you were talking about that. But I want to circle back really quickly to when you were talking about green pathways and all the ways you all are thinking forward. Are those embedded in your career and technical ed programs, or will they be primarily extracurricular experiences? How are you all thinking about that?
We're thinking about building in trainings while the service members are going through their experience. So, trainings that allow them to graduate or finish their service program with certain credentials, certain certificates that have economic value and are going to be able to be used and are going to be valued by employers afterwards. So these are the conversations we're starting now with community colleges, with groups that are doing apprenticeships, and also corporations about how to provide these trainings and these certificates to students or to young people that are going through our service programs. But we're pretty new in it, and I'll just be candid. It surprised me how little work has been done historically of connecting those who serve in the community to an actual job and career. And so what we're doing is saying again, there's enormous if you serve and if you're involved in your community, there's enormous value to your experience. And what we want to do is layer on top of that experience to get to launch you on a career and get you to continue being able to serve our state.
Yeah, and so you all have the programs and you all have the different experiences, and then how do you then help students to make that leap, because you're talking about that connectedness isn't always there. So how do you get students to make that leap from I'm having these great experiences and now I want to turn that into a career? What's the best next step?
Yeah, we're building this, so we're learning. And if you have advice or anyone listening has advice, please reach out to us. But our thought process is one, at a minimum, is connecting and making sure that young people and the people going through our program understand the opportunities that are out there. And just to give you a sense of scale of what we're building in California over the next couple of years, because of the investments from the governor and the legislature, we're going to have a force of service members throughout California twice the size of the entire Peace Corps. And so we have a really exciting opportunity and special opportunity here in California to basically take tens of thousands of young people and connect them in very, very practical and real ways to corporations who are hiring, to local governments and state agencies that are hiring, to school districts that are hiring. And that's the role that we have to play, we think, of actually just making that connection. So for instance, we're holding a job fair for all of our College Corps members before they graduate, where they're going to be exposed to employers who are looking to hire them and to give them the opportunity. We're doing with our Youth Jobs Corps program. There's wraparound services. So this is a Jobs Corps program to provide service opportunities for low-income youth, formerly incarcerated, former foster youth, and help springboard their professional career, hopefully through service. But their entire program has wraparound services around how do you build a resume, leadership training, networking training. And so we're being very intentional about both building those skills, why the members serving, but then also what we have to build is the community that connects them directly. And we're just starting that work now, but we think that has enormous potential, and it's actually critical for the future of our state.
And Josh, not that you really have time to think about this, but how do you see just the overall program of the California volunteer program in general? How do you see that expanding in the future?
Well, we hope it expands rapidly and aggressively. Our governor is very has been very upfront and bold about this. When we launched Climate Action Corps, he says we're creating a level of scale of climate action that we hope that has never been done before, and we hope gets replicated around the country and hopefully around the planet. And we've already seen that as many states have since then created their own climate corps, and we think a lot more states are going to continue to follow. We think every state should have a college corps. We have a student debt crisis in this country. We just do. Everyone knows it. It's crippling our students that are graduating. It's crippling our economy, and it unnecessarily affects, we know, Black and brown youth. And so we have to deal with this. And we feel like we've come up with a very interesting model that happens to be very popular, where we'll help you pay for school if you serve your community. Every state should have that, and we've been pleasantly surprised that states are starting to reach out. We hope these ideas continue to scale, but we just from a sort of a high level, we feel so strongly that this work of investing and creating opportunities for people to serve, especially early in their life, and to understand that what it means to be a Californian or an American is to be connected, is to give back, is to be involved in your community. Creating those opportunities is so foundational to our whole society, our way of living, our political system. And it's also foundational to how we continue to move forward as a society. Do we continue to move forward isolated and divided and polarized? Or do we continue, or do we move forward as a society defined by compassion and community and connection? Answering that question is why we think this work is so important. And so we have to scale. We have to go bigger. We need every other state and every other country and the rest of the world to follow if we're going to live in that kind of society that we feel so passionate about.
And to make this actionable, Josh, when a high school principal is listening to all the great information you're sharing and they say, yes, I want to create a culture of volunteerism in my school, what's the best first step or first couple of steps?
I love that question, and I hope we get lots of principals asking themselves that question. First is you have an awesome opportunity, I'll say, as a principal, as a leader of your school, to start to really create a culture of service, to say to your young people, when we send you out in the world, we don't just expect you to think about how you're going to make money. We expect you to think about how you're going to help others, because that's good for not just the community, that's good for you too. And so what we're going to do is start to look into, could service be a requirement for graduating? And obviously, we need to make sure there's not barriers. We're not creating extra barriers for students that are having challenges. But how do I create a culture service where the students graduating my school understand that what it means to go out into the world is not just about making money? And I think that's been a cultural message that's been sent for decades. We need to reverse that, and we need to say, what we expect you to go out and to live a meaningful and a purposeful life. And if you're going to do that, it's not about the title that you have at work or that your paycheck. It's about what you're doing for others, and then actually creating that opportunity for that student to have an experience where they get to feel the joy, as the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu calls it, of helping others. And if you can create that opportunity, you can change the lives of your students. But every principal knows that. The last thing I'll maybe just say is you also have, I think, an awesome opportunity as a principal, as a leader of a school, as a superintendent, to say to other leaders, college presidents, create opportunities for our students to be able to serve when they end up graduating high school and going into college that helps them pay for school at the same time. Create that opportunity. To your other local elected officials, ask them, demand them to invest in creating these opportunities. I think as a principal, you have an enormous platform to speak on behalf of the young people you serve, to say what's best for them and what's best for all society. Why this is a win-win is if we're actually giving them the opportunity to serve in a meaningful way.
Well, Josh, I've definitely felt all the joy with this interview. Thank you for all the great information that you shared. Thank you for joining us today to talk about the notion of service and what it means, not just for California, but to serve as a global citizen. So thank you for joining us. And a huge thank you to Mason, our podcast producer.
Thank you both. So very grateful.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today. We want this podcast to be actionable, insightful, and a great way to learn about what's next in learning. In order to stay on the cutting edge, we need people in the field to tell us what they're hearing, what they're wanting, and what they're needing to learn more about. Got a topic or a guest in mind? Send your recommendations to me, Mason at gettingsmart.com. And if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to leave a review in Apple Podcasts or subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to share the podcast on social media using the hashtag GSPodcasts. Thanks so much.